I'd say it's a combination of things, as it would have to be to allow something to get that big a part of your portfolio, because it goes against many of the tenets of financial discipline. On the other hand, the people that actually are the richest people in the country all are massively concentrated. Buffett and Berkshire, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. So they're not widely diversified. They're highly concentrated. And I think that's because they have a high degree of confidence, or have had a high degree of confidence in the value of those investments. But my thinking here was that I heard a talk on Bitcoin given by the person who's known as Patient Zero in the Bitcoin world, Wences Casares. And Wences gave a talk at the Allen Company Sun Valley Conference, and he led off his talk, this is 2014 I want to say, he led off his talk by saying that, asking how anybody owned Bitcoin. No, nobody in the audience owned it except for him. And did anybody know what it was? And a few scattered hands went up. And he said, well, let me explain to you why I own Bitcoin. And he said, and it's because I understand why you wouldn't understand it, because you all live in America and you have a rule of law, and you have orderly governments, and in most times you have relatively low inflation and a prosperous economy. And he said, but I'm from Argentina and my family's been there 150 years, and we've been wiped out 4 separate times by the Argentinian government, seizing our assets, nationalizing the banks, inflating us out with hyperinflation. And he said, so Bitcoin can't be touched by the government. It's a peer-to-peer, decentralized, independent network. It's a ledger that records every transaction. That's public. It's immutable. And he said, so the government, if you have Bitcoin, the government cannot take it away from you. And he said, so think of it as an insurance policy. And he went into it and talked about it. And I thought, and he talked about putting 1% of your liquid net worth in Bitcoin. And I thought that was sensible. He laid out what it could do if it worked. He said then that it was very risky, because then it was about $200. But I bought some then, and I bought a little bit more over time, and it became $500. And then I stopped buying it. And I didn't buy it for years until just the spring of this year. It hit a $66,000 high price. And then in 4 weeks, it was in half. Now, Bitcoin has gone up on average 170% a year for the last 11 years. Now, but that's not every year, it's just an average. It's gone down 3 different times by more than 80%. So that is, a very volatile and therefore very dangerous, especially if you're levered, as you can be if you're on some of these exchanges that'll loan you 50 to 1 on your Bitcoin. But each time it's been stopped at around the low 80s level, and it's come back. And this time I started buying it again at $30,000, down from 66. And my reasoning was, there's a lot more people using it now. There's a lot more money going into it in the venture capital world. There are a lot of people who are skeptics who are now at least trying it out. And I thought maybe 50% is a good stopping point for it. But if it goes back down to 80 or 85, I'll buy it all the way down. Well, it did stop right around 50%, and it slowly started its way back up again. But I bought a fair amount at the $30,000 range, and have been adding to various Bitcoin-related investments since then. So there's a company that that we own in our income fund called Stronghold Digital, which is a Bitcoin mining company, where the CEO owns 35%. It looks like they could make $6 to $8 in a couple of years, and they're a very low-cost miner of Bitcoin. And all their energy that they're using, the electricity usage, is all renewables, or it gets credits for cleaning up abandoned coal mines. So it's one of those things that, as much as I like Bitcoin, I've bought Stronghold in here and own it also via the fund, as well as MicroStrategy and some other companies. There's several different ways to approach that. I would say that right now, it's best thought of as digital gold. So gold is, as people have said, a store of value for 5,000 years. And gold is what people typically fled to when the governments tried to inflate them out. And in the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt confiscated everybody's gold in 1933. You had to turn it in or you went to jail. So they can't confiscate your Bitcoin, because there's nothing, if you hold it securely, as long as you have an internet connection, you can send it somewhere instantaneously at very low cost. And the reason I like the insurance company analogy is because if you think about, people talk about the intrinsic value of Bitcoin. This is a Warren Buffett argument, that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. It doesn't have any earnings. It'll never pay any dividends. And so how do you even think about something like that? It is a new technology. It's something that couldn't be done before. But in any case, the answer that I have to that is, well, I mean, what's the intrinsic value of that Mickey Mantle baseball card that sold for $5.5 million? It's just cardboard, and it doesn't even have a legend. It could be counterfeited very easily. Or what's the intrinsic value of a Picasso painting, which is just canvas and paint, and maybe a frame? But people will pay millions or tens of millions of dollars for it. And so it comes down at the very basic level for supply and demand. So Bitcoin is the only economic entity where the supply is unaffected by the demand. So even with gold, if gold, which is $1,800 today, if gold goes to $18,000, there will be a lot more gold mined because mines that are unprofitable will become profitable. And so gold, which accretes today, the production of gold is equal about 1.5% to 2% of the total value per year. That's the same accretion that Bitcoin has currently. But this year, 2022, I think will drop below 1.5% on that. So only 21 million Bitcoin can ever be created or close to it. It doesn't matter if Bitcoin is 100,000 or 20 million, there's only going to be that many of them. So all you have to really believe is that the demand for Bitcoin will grow faster than 1.5%, over the next number of years, and the price inexorably will go up. So I've only recently been allowing myself to be described as a Bitcoin bull. I used to tell people, they say, oh, you're a Bitcoin bull, you own a lot of Bitcoin. I'm like, I do own a lot of it, but I'm actually a Bitcoin observer, and I'm observing its trajectory as a new technology and comparing it to the trajectories of things like the printing press, or the steam engine, or the railroads, or the automobile, or electricity, and it's following that very, not predictable, because it's not predictable certainly in the early days, a well understood path for the adoption of new technologies. And I think it was Stan Druckenmiller said earlier in the year that, and now he owns Bitcoin, by the way, but he said that Bitcoin was a solution in search of a problem. And what I've found amusing about that is every new technology is a solution in search of a problem. Because you have a new technology, then you try and figure out what you're going to do with it. And so, when we created the internet, what are we going to do with that? So the Defense Department had good uses for it, but it was tough for other people to see. But now everybody can see what the value of the internet is. The internal combustion engine, which was very dangerous and all, but now that's taken over the world, and now we're going to move to electricity. So all kinds of technologies have to grow into their potential. And Bitcoin is, I guess if you want the theoretical answer to the question, is that's the work of Brian Arthur, Santa Fe Institute, and Stanford, who is kind of the leading authority on what he calls increasing returns economics and what he calls lock-in and path dependence in the economy. So his basic idea is that when technologies reach a certain dominance and they're the leader, it's almost impossible to dislodge them, even without a very superior technology.